A New York City surprise has Republicans and Democrats nationwide scratching their head and talking all kinds of trash today. New York State Assemblyman Zohran Mamdani, declared victory over Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary for mayor. NBC News has not yet called this race, but Cuomo conceded after Mamdani emerged with a commanding lead. Mamdani's apparent win comes after an energized campaign that centered on the cost of living.
Each of us dreams of a New York that is more hopeful and affordable for all. And we have worked hard for our dream.
Republicans like New York Congressman Mike Lawler are already trying to make Mamdani a sort of a poster child, if you will, as a democratic socialist for the Democratic Party. But as a political analyst and friend of the show, Tim Miller notes, one municipal primary will not make or break the revolution. Save some ammo for 2027. Joining us now is MSNBC political analyst Basil Smikle. He's a professor of practice at the School of Professional Studies at Columbia University. Very important title. And he is the former executive director of the New York State Democratic Party. Welcome, Basil.
Basil, I've got my thoughts, but let's hear yours. What do you think?
Man, listen. So first of all, I think that the signs were there. Early on in the cycle, he had raised a tremendous amount of money from a large swath of New Yorkers, a lot of diverse New Yorkers. So there were signs that he would have this really good breadth of support throughout the city. But I would tell you, my sort of gut reaction is that he did something that you want campaigns to do, which is create a movement around a candidacy. And that's what he did. He talked about not necessarily being the Democrats being the anti-Trump party, but in addition to being against something, we need to be for something more. And I think that kind of language, that kind of engagement, that energy, he's 20 years younger than me. And I'm not old by any means, at least I don't think I am. And so it just represents a fresh face and a repudiation, I would say, of the Democratic establishment. He's got work to do, no question about it. But it's a really big victory for his campaign, and I think for a lot of young anti-establishment, but Democrats who were just kind of tired of the establishment Democrats.
Can I just say, Michael Steele, how nice it is to have this conversation with someone who has served as a state party chair and someone who served as a national party chair? Because I am curious, your thoughts, Michael, on the extent to which you can really extrapolate out a win like this to national politics.
You can't. You can't. I'm sorry, people. I appreciate Basil. You know, you're my boy. I love it.
No,
This is not a movement, baby. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry. One election, it's a municipal election. And I can tell you that there's a difference between a municipal election and a statewide election and a federal election. Voters, there are different voters in each of those buckets. One of the problems with this movement analysis that some have been throwing out today is the fact that the turnout was low. What's your turnout here? Who are you turning out? And in any type of primary election, you're more progressive on the left and more conservative on the right. Base voters turn out. So having said all that, I don't want to take away from the importance.
Yes, because it's raining right now.
It's not, look, I'm just being realistic because this is how Democrats get themselves in the
the trouble. I understand.
Right?
I understand.
Because let me finish my point.
Okay,
turn it over to you.
You're raining.
I am raining because you've got to be realistic. Because there's everything else out here that is going on that is inconsistent or not in line with what this election is purportedly saying. So I think you need to keep that perspective. I'm not taking away from what happened here. You can build on this. But as I can tell you, as indicated by Congressman Lawler and others, there's some perils ahead if the Democrats aren't prepared to package this win in a way in that it doesn't become an anchor around their collective ankle. So, what do you say to that, Basil?
I actually agree with all of those points. Not because, and I think, look, this was an important race, and I do think he created a movement around his candidacy. But that's why I made the point that the work doesn't stop there. He didn't get a lot of African American votes, and that's a problem. That's why, that's one of the first things he's going to have to do is actually go out and engage those communities a lot more than he had before. And you're absolutely right. There is a lot of work that needs to be done in other cities and in other states, especially in the fact that we have a gubernatorial race next year and 2026 and New York Democratic primaries for statewide office. A lot of what happens in New York City dictates how those primaries go. Mm-hmm. So the city is going to pull her to the left. That is Governor Hochul, and that's going to create a lot of attacks from the right. That does not mean that it's impossible to get over that hump. It just means the Democrats have to be prepared for that. But I think what they would say is that they would rather die on their feet than live on their knees. They've got to be for something, and they've got to find a way to kind of capitalize on this moment and say, we did what you expected of us. We supported your incrementalism in the policy making in the past, but we've got to start focusing on what comes next. I think that's the question I think that's the point that everybody was trying to make last night. What's next?
Look, I guess I felt like I was being rained on over here.
This is the Michael Steele from now on.
Michael Steele, because he was raining on the parades. I'm just going to continue to go, but there is nobody more critical.
A parade walking in circles.
Well, let me just say, I give you the Minnesota State Senate race. I give you the Nebraska mayoral race. I give you closing the, at one point, plus 30 district in Florida that was cut down to 16. I give you the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin. I give you the state Senate and state legislative race in Pennsylvania. That is the reason that the Democrats are still in control of the House in Pennsylvania. And that Minnesota State Senate race is the reason why Democrats were in charge of things in Minnesota. I say that to say that everywhere that there have been super competitive matchups since 2024, since that very fateful day, Democrats have done well. So to me, that says that in the states across the country, people are figuring out what works for them. And what people, in my opinion, and with my operative hat on, should take away from this race is that what people want is for you to knock on their door, to go everywhere, to be authentic. Do not wait for the poll-tested message, and keep it very close to what's important to them. Affordability does mean the rent is too damn high, and that's what he talked about. Now, should everybody run out and be a Democratic socialist? No, I used to work for one of them, and even he ran for president as a Democrat.
And
and I tell you,
know how that turned out.
Yes, but I also worked for a former vice president that was elected and beat Donald Trump the first time.
But she wasn't a Democratic socialist.
But I will tell you, Michael, it's not about, please, Basil, because it's not about being a Democratic socialist.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
You want it to be about the Democratic socialist, but it's not about being a Democratic socialist.
The seeds of this have been planted for years. And the reason I say that is if you look at what Bernie Sanders did in 2016. And after that, what we saw was a lot of folks that say, okay, if I'm not going to get elected to office, I'm going to start going into state parties and changing things from within. So we've actually seen this going back several years. Hey, if I really wanted to
David Hogg tried to do that, and that didn't turn out too well.
I go back to Howard Dean if you really want to talk about it. But I would say that the seeds of this have been planted for a long time. And the truth is, if you've got, and I have to say this, if you've got someone or candidates like Andrew Cuomo, and what he did was run a race that wasn't meant for this moment. And if you have a lot of establishment Democrats kind of going back into that old toolbox and running these older style campaigns where it seems like more of a Rose Garden strategy compared to what this next generation is doing, then you're going to have these kinds of results. Because people want their doors knocked on. People want to see energy in the street. People want you to ask questions. People want thoughtfulness. And people want big ideas. And that's what I go back to say. They would rather lose pushing that forward than think that they can win in this atmosphere of incrementalism when nothing seems to get done. And I think we're just at a point where some of us need to stand back and kind of let them cook.